The house keys were still jingling in my purse when the HR email landed. Urgent meeting. 2:30 p.m. Conference room 4B. No subject line, no warning, no hint that everything I had trusted was about to collapse. I remember smiling to myself that morning, still giddy from the night before, when I had stood barefoot in my empty living room, dreaming about paint colors, weekend dinners, a future finally coming together. 5 years at Crestwell Solutions. 5 years of loyalty. 5 years of promises. We're a family here. Stick with us. The future's bright. So when I sat down in that cold, fluorescent-lit conference room, still wearing the same badge that had hung proudly around my neck, for half a decade, I wasn't prepared for what came next. Caroline Marks from HR didn't even meet my eyes. Mr. Dalton, the man who once told me I was the foundation of the department, just cleared his throat and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Due to operational adjustments, Caroline recited mechanically. Your hours are being reduced effective immediately. No apology, no warning, no mention of the house I had just bought because of the raise and full-time status they promised me 6 weeks ago. I stared at the paper, the words swimming in front of me. Part-time. No benefits. Reduced salary. And somehow I smiled. A small, tired smile. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why. I simply picked up the pen, signed their papers, stood up, and walked out, carrying 5 years of broken promises and a mortgage payment they knew I could no longer afford. 2 months later, while cutting coupons at my kitchen table under a flickering light bulb, I got a text from an old coworker. Turn on the news. You're going to want to see this. That's when I learned the CEO of Crestwell Solutions, the man who gutted my future without a second thought, was facing a reckoning he never saw coming. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel broken. I felt something else entirely. Steady. Unshakable. Ready. When I first walked into Crestwell Solutions 5 years ago, I didn't just want a job. I wanted a future. Something solid. Something that wouldn't vanish at the first sign of trouble. Crestwell wasn't flashy. There were no glass walls or unlimited snack bars. Just an aging office building off the highway, rows of cubicles, and the quiet hum of tired fluorescent lights. But it felt safe. It felt steady. And after bouncing between contract jobs and side gigs through most of my 20s, steady was exactly what I craved. The promises came early. Mr. Dalton, my direct manager, welcomed me with a firm handshake and a grin. We're a family here, he said. Stick with us, work hard, we'll take care of you. And I did. I stayed late to troubleshoot client issues. I covered holiday shifts without complaint. I took certification courses on my own dime to improve my skills. Every quarter, Mr. Dalton would pat me on the back, tell me promotions were coming soon, that I was the backbone of the support team. And I believed him, because when you're hungry for stability, you cling hard to anything that feels like home. Over time, Crestwell started delivering small signs of trust, an internal award for outstanding service, a minor title change. A few extra vacation days tossed my way like confetti. Not much, but enough. Enough to keep me believing that bigger things were just around the corner. Enough to make me think I was building something that could last. When I sat across from Mr. Dalton 6 months ago, discussing my upcoming performance review, he smiled warmly and said, I don't want you worrying about anything. You're exactly the kind of person we're building this company around. I went home that night, sat on my threadbare couch, and finally let myself dream a little bigger. A house. Not a mansion. Not a dream home. Just a small, tired 2-bedroom place with a cracked driveway and peeling shutters. A place where I could paint the walls whatever color I wanted, where I could finally put down roots. I spent weeks poring over mortgage calculators, running numbers late into the night, worrying if I was making the right choice, asking myself if it was reckless, if it was too soon, if I was reaching too far. And every time the fear crept in, I heard Mr. Dalton's voice echoing in my head. "You're exactly the kind of person we're building this company around." So I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and signed the papers. I moved in 3 weeks later, alone, terrified, hopeful. That first night, I stood in the middle of the empty living room, the hardwood floors creaking under my socks, and promised myself, no matter how hard it gets, you earned this. I set my folding chair and secondhand lamp in the corner, unrolled a sleeping bag on the bare floor, and slept with the kind of exhausted joy that only comes when you realize you've finally built something with your own 2 hands. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a distant fantasy. It felt real, solid, earned. And when I woke up the next morning, the sun pouring through my dirty windows, I smiled, thinking, this is just the beginning. I had no way of knowing how quickly it would all come crashing down. It started with an email. No subject line, no explanation, just a meeting invite, stamped urgent, scheduled for that afternoon in conference room 4B. I stared at the notification on my screen, a knot tightening low in my stomach. But I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a new project, maybe staffing changes, maybe anything except what I feared. I walked down the long hallway toward HR, the scuffed carpet muffling my footsteps. Every step felt heavier than the last. Caroline Marks sat at the end of the table when I entered, her face carefully arranged, into the same sympathetic expression HR people must practice in mirrors. Mr. Dalton was already there too. He didn't look up when I walked in. He just fiddled with his pen, tapping it rhythmically against a stack of folders. Something inside me knew, before a single word was spoken. "Please have a seat," Caroline said, gesturing to the empty chair across from them. I sat, my hands folded, carefully in my lap, a lifetime of invisible warnings screaming inside my head. "We appreciate all the work you've done for Crestwell," Caroline began, reading from a sheet of paper in front of her, her voice clinical, detached, as if she were ordering coffee, not shattering my life. "However, due to evolving business needs, we are making immediate operational adjustments." I stared at her, not blinking, not breathing. "Effective immediately," she continued, "your scheduled hours will be reduced by 50%. She slid a slim envelope across the table toward me. Inside, new terms, new salary, a short, polite letter explaining how this wasn't a reflection of my performance. Just business. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have. Could see Mr. Dalton glancing at me now, his mouth tight, his fingers still tapping. Not once did he speak. Not once did he offer the slightest apology or explanation. The man who had once said I was the foundation of his team now couldn't even meet my eyes. "We understand this may come as a surprise," Caroline added, her voice tilting, the way someone speaks when they're trying to sound empathetic, but can't quite remember what empathy feels like. Surprise? I wanted to laugh. Bitter, broken laughter, clawing at my throat. This wasn't surprise. This was betrayal dressed in polite language and company letterhead. I thought of my mortgage, the ink still drying on the closing documents, the first payment already pulled from my account, the thin cushion of savings I had, already thinner than I liked. I thought of the promises. "We're a family. Stick with us. We'll take care of you." And I realized, in one breathtaking moment, what those promises were worth. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Caroline slid another paper toward me. A form acknowledging the new arrangement. A signature line waiting expectantly at the bottom. Stared at it for a long moment. Not because I didn't know what to do. but because I needed to remember this feeling. I needed to remember this exact moment, the way trust evaporated into smoke, the way 5 years of loyalty could be erased with a single meeting, the way a future could be taken, not with cruelty, but with casual, practiced indifference. Slowly, I reached for the pen, signed my name, pushed the paper back across the table without a word. Caroline smiled, a small, empty smile, and stood. "Thank you, Claire. We wish you the best." Mr. Dalton didn't move, didn't say a word. And I realized then, the real betrayal wasn't in cutting my hours. It was in the way they made sure I knew how little I had ever truly mattered. I gathered my things. The framed photo of my parents on my desk, the sticky notes with inside jokes only my teammates would understand, the small cactus my sister had given me as a housewarming gift. I packed it all into a worn tote bag. No cardboard box this time. Just the scraps of a life I had built on promises that dissolved the moment it became inconvenient to keep them. I walked through the office one last time, faces turned away, conversations hushed. Chairs shifted awkwardly. No one made eye contact. No one said goodbye. And maybe that hurt more than anything else. The realization that loyalty, real loyalty, was only ever expected from me, never owed to me. I stepped outside into the biting air, the city noise swallowing the silence I carried in my chest. One hand clutched my tote bag. The other curled into a fist in my jacket pocket. Not from anger. Not from hatred, but from a quiet, stubborn promise that no matter how heavy the coming months would be, I would not be broken by the people who had mistaken kindness for weakness. I would survive this, even if they never saw me rise again. The first mortgage payment hit harder than I expected. Not just the money pulled from my thinning account, but the heavy silence that came after. The kind of silence that fills up every corner of a room, every hour of a day, every quiet thought. Before sleep, I wasn't just paying for walls and a roof now. I was paying for a promise someone else had broken. In the early days, I scrambled, sold the designer purses I had gifted myself after big projects, sold the old gaming console gathering dust in my closet, canceled every subscription, paused every luxury. Every dollar became a battlefield. A gallon of milk meant weighing whether I could skip lunch the next day. An unexpected car repair felt like an earthquake. I started saying no to birthday dinners, no to weekend trips, no to anything. That wasn't survival. Survival. That's what it became. Not living, not thriving, just surviving. Some nights I sat on the floor of my empty living room, wrapped in the scratchy throw blanket my grandmother had knitted years ago, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. Not just buying the house, but trusting them, believing them, letting their promises build the foundation I had tried to stand on. Panic lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. Throbbing, relentless. Every missed email response, every delayed paycheck, every letter in the mail that might be a late notice, felt like a hammer tapping on thin glass, waiting for the moment I finally shattered. There were days I thought about selling the house, giving it all back, running, starting over somewhere smaller, somewhere safer, somewhere where dreams didn't hurt so much when they broke. But every time I looked at the peeling blue paint on the front door, or the single crack running across the kitchen tile, I reminded myself, you earned this. You built this. And no one, no heartless manager, no careless HR director, was going to erase it. Slowly, I adjusted. I took on freelance gigs, writing content for small businesses, editing newsletters for nonprofits, designing cheap logos for startups that could barely pay me on time. I learned to stretch a single meal across 3 days, learned how to cut my own hair, learned which secondhand stores had the best clearance racks on Tuesdays. Survival wasn't glamorous. It wasn't inspiring. It was messy and exhausting, and sometimes humiliating. But it was mine. People talk about strength like it's some great roaring thing, like it announces itself with banners and battle cries. But real strength? It's the quiet decision to keep going even when there's no applause, no witnesses, no guarantee it'll get better. It's choosing to stay steady when everything around you tries to shake you apart. There were no grand turning points, no miracle checks in the mail, no sudden lifelines. Just small moments, tiny wins, little victories, paying the electric bill in full, finding enough spare change to grab coffee on a cold morning, finishing a freelance project and knowing the lights would stay on one more month. Step by step, dollar by dollar, breath by breath. Sometimes, late at night, sitting by the one lamp I could afford to keep plugged in, I would whisper a quiet promise to myself. They might have cut you down, but they don't get to decide whether you grow back. And I clung to that, to the stubborn, tired hope that there was still something waiting beyond this season of survival. Something better, something real, something they would never get to take away. It started with a whisper, a late-night text from an old coworker. "Have you seen the news?" I hadn't. I was sitting at my kitchen table, balancing overdue bills against a calculator that laughed in my face, but curiosity, once sparked, demands to be fed. I opened my laptop, refreshed the local news page, and there it was, Crestwell Solutions, CEO under investigation for financial misconduct. The headline hit like a thunderclap. Below it, paragraphs unraveling the truth. Secret executive bonuses quietly paid out during the quarter. They slashed employee hours. Funds diverted from employee benefits into executive travel budgets. False financial statements used to justify operational adjustments. It wasn't just mismanagement. It was betrayal, dressed in spreadsheets and polished boardroom smiles. As the story broke, more cracks spiderwebbed across Crestwell's gleaming facade. Clients pulled contracts overnight, citing ethical concerns. Vendors demanded back payments. Employees flooded Glassdoor and LinkedIn with scathing reviews, stories about hours gutted without warning, benefits canceled mid-treatment, promises broken like fragile glass under heavy boots. Within 2 weeks, Crestwell Solutions was hemorrhaging faster than any PR team could cover. The CEO, Mr. Dalton, resigned to spend more time with family, a euphemism so thin it was almost insulting. Caroline Marks disappeared from the company directory shortly after, her LinkedIn profile switching to open to new opportunities. Inside sources leaked screenshots of desperate internal memos, requests for voluntary pay cuts, pleas for solidarity during a difficult time. Empty promises that the company's heart is still strong, but hearts built on broken promises don't beat for long. By the end of the month, Crestwell's largest client, the one whose contract had once kept the entire support division afloat, terminated their agreement. Without them, Crestwell collapsed like a house of cards, folding under the weight of its own arrogance. No farewell party, no farewell statement. Just a quiet disappearance from the world they had once claimed to lead. I watched it happen from my tiny living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor because I couldn't afford furniture yet. No champagne, no celebration. Just a quiet, steady breath. The kind you take when something heavy finally lifts off your chest. It wasn't joy I felt, watching them fall. It was justice, not the kind handed down by judges or juries. The quieter kind, the natural kind. The kind that grows when people build their empires on the backs of others, and finally, inevitably, those foundations give way. Friends asked me later if I ever thought about sending a message to Mr. Dalton. Some final words. Some proof that he hadn't destroyed me. But I didn't need to. I didn't need him to see me thriving. I didn't need him to remember my name. Because the point wasn't making him regret losing me. The point was never needing their approval again. The real victory wasn't in Crestwell's downfall. It was in my survival. It was in every quiet decision not to give up, in every meal stretched across 3 days, in every stubborn night spent clinging to the dream of a home they tried to rip away. It was in the life I was building. One unpaid invoice, one scraped-together mortgage payment, one sleepless night at a time, without them, without their permission, without their broken promises weighing me down. Crestwell Solutions faded from the headlines within a few months. Another company bought out their remaining assets for pennies on the dollar. Their office signs came down. Their website went dark. Their leadership scattered into quiet consulting roles, trying to scrub their names clean. But the people who worked there, the ones who sacrificed, who built, who trusted, they remembered, and I remembered too. Not with bitterness, not with rage, but with a fierce, steady kind of pride. The kind that grows not from what you survive, but from who you choose to become after the survival. Life didn't magically fix itself after Crestwell fell. There were still bills to pay. Still nights when fear rattled around my chest like loose change. Still mornings when the weight of starting over felt almost too much. But there was something new too. Something steadier than anything Crestwell had ever offered. There was freedom. Freedom to build my own future without waiting for someone else's permission. Freedom to stop measuring my worth in quarterly reviews and bonus charts. Freedom to finally believe that loyalty is a choice, not an obligation. 6 months after Crestwell's collapse, I found a new job. Smaller company, less flashy title. No grand promises, just honesty, respect, decency. I walked into my first day with my head high, not because someone else validated me, but because I had already survived the worst of it, and still chosen to stand back up. The house is still mine. The cracked driveway still needs fixing. The shutters still need paint. The kitchen faucet still leaks on cold mornings. But it's mine. Bought with my hope. Saved with my stubbornness. Protected with every tired breath I refuse to waste on people who didn't deserve it. Some evenings, I sit on the front steps with a cup of cheap coffee, watching the sunset melt into the trees at the end of the street. No suit, no deadlines. No fear clawing at my back. Just the slow, steady heartbeat of a life rebuilt with my own hands. Sometimes I think about Crestwell. Not often. Not with anger. Just as a quiet reminder that survival isn't about clinging to places that never saw you. It's about walking away, even when it breaks your heart, and choosing to believe that something better is waiting on the other side. If I had stayed silent, if I had begged for scraps, if I had let their broken promises define me, I would have lost far more than a paycheck. I would have lost myself, and no title, no salary, no fleeting recognition could ever be worth that. The best revenge was never watching Crestwell fall. The best revenge was learning to build a life that didn't need them to stand. This year, when I sat down to make my mortgage payment, I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel fear. I felt pride. Because no matter how hard they tried to take it from me, this home, this life, was mine. Earned. Fought for. Saved. And that kind of victory? It doesn't fit on a resume. It doesn't show up in job titles or award plaques. It lives in the quiet moments. In the steady breath after the storm. In the knowledge that you survived. And you never let them break you. Not truly. Not ever. If you've ever trusted someone's promises, only to watch them break when you needed them most, know that your strength is not measured by how you fall, but by how you rise. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more true stories about resilience, rebuilding, and finding your way back to yourself.